everyone. I'm Dr. Paul Snellgrove. I'm the Associate Scientific Director of the Ocean Frontier Institute and Professor at Memorial University. I want to recognize that the Ocean Frontier Institute's physical offices are located on ancestral and traditional territories of diverse Indigenous groups in Atlantic Canada. Our institute is working hard to advance respectful and meaningful partnerships with Indigenous peoples. So welcome to the Ocean Frontier Institute Social Science and Humanities Working Group, People and the Ocean Speaker Series. This is the first of 8 webinars featuring international experts who seek to understand complex interactions between society, economy, culture, and marine and coastal environments. Thank you all for coming, and my heartfelt thanks to the working group for organizing this impressive webinar series. 2 major objectives of the Ocean Frontier Institute that we set out from the very beginning were to try to create greater collaboration among Atlantic Canadian universities, particularly Dalhousie and Munn, and to partner both inwardly and outwardly with scholars across Canada and around the world to promote truly transdisciplinary ocean research. I think we've moved the needle significantly on both fronts, and this webinar series illustrates that achievement quite nicely. Now, today's webinar, Interdisciplinary Ocean and Fisheries Economics in Action by Dr. Rashid Soumaila, shows just how strongly human needs and fishery science intertwine, and how we must intertwine the science as well as the challenges if we want to achieve real solutions. I'd like to thank Rashid for joining us today in this important discussion. So nice to see you, Rashid. And also to thank our 2 discussants, OFI's own Ratana Chuanpagdi from Memorial University and Andres Cisneros Montemero from Simon Fraser University. Andres, I had the pleasure of visiting your hometown of Guaymas, Mexico, when I was a graduate student, meeting a ship to head out with a submersible Alvin to sample the Guaymas hydrothermal vents. Quite an amazing experience and location. In any case, today is truly a coast-to-coast discussion across 4.5 time zones and more, perhaps. So let's get on with it. I'll turn this over now to Dr. Barb Neese from Memorial University, a major force behind this series and also the moderator for today's session. Barb.
Thanks very much, Paul, and welcome everyone. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Rashid, Ratana, and Andres, and to moderate the event today. So just a bit of housekeeping. You may have noticed that the recording button is on. So this session is being recorded, and the presentation and discussant exchanges and so on will be posted to the Ocean Frontier Institute website or YouTube channel once this is finished. And this is the first in a series of up to 8 presentations that we'll be having over this coming year on a roughly monthly basis, starting with today. So Dr. Rashid Soumaila is a University Killam Professor and a Canada Research Chair in Interdisciplinary Ocean and Fisheries Economics at the Institute for Oceans and Fisheries in the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at the University of British Columbia. His research focuses on bioeconomics, marine ecosystem valuation, and the analysis of global issues such as fisheries subsidies, marine protected areas, illegal fishing, climate change, marine plastic pollution, and oil spills. Soumaila is widely published and cited. In addition to being a Killam Professor, he won the 2017 Volvo Environment Prize and was named a Fellow of the Royal Society of Canada in 2019. And Rashid, I really, really appreciate you taking the time today to do this presentation for us. Our discussants are Andres Cisneros Montemayor. Andres is a resource economist specializing in ocean and coastal social-ecological systems and an assistant professor at Simon Fraser's University's School of Resource and Environmental Management. Andres is also the deputy director of the Nippon, never quite sure how to say that, Foundation Ocean Nexus Center, one of the largest interdisciplinary collaborative research networks addressing social equity, well-being, and public health in coastal and marine contexts throughout the world. And our second discussant is Dr. Ratana Chuanpagdi, who is a university research professor in the Department of Geography at Memorial University here in Newfoundland, where I'm also based. She's directing a major global research partnership, Too Big to Ignore, which aims at elevating the profile of small-scale fisheries and rectifying their marginalization in national and international policy. She's also the lead on Module I inside of the Ocean Frontier Institute and a member of the Ocean Frontier Institute Social Science and Humanities Working Group, which I chair. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm keeping track of time. So we'll have a roughly half an hour presentation by Rashid, followed by brief opening remarks by Ratana and Andres, then followed by a short discussion among them. And then we will open up to the wider group for a discussion based on a Q&A. Now the Q&A is open and I encourage you to use that and I will be monitoring it. The chat is also open. I will try to monitor both. But if you have a serious question you really want to ask, it would really help me if you put it in the Q&A. So Rashid, you're up.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction and for the invitation to come and join this and share some things with you. It's always a pleasure and a privilege actually to get the chance to share and learn from each other in a webinar or seminar like this. So this is wonderful. Good to see familiar faces and non-familiar faces too. So it's always great. So the title of my talk is Interdisciplinary Ocean and Fisheries Economics in Action, and so the idea is Paul talked about transdisciplinary work about the ocean. This has been growing and increasing and it's from all disciplines, and this is an economic angle as I see it, and I try to formulate it in my work and with my group and so on. So a basic outline, 3 things I will try to do. So what is this interdisciplinary ocean and fisheries economics? This is an idea I've been developing over time, and my hope is that by the end of my career, I will be able to launch a sub-discipline of economics with that title. So this is part of just thinking aloud and trying to share and get comments from colleagues from around the world as this idea gels in my head. So I'll give you a few elements of that as I'm thinking, but it's evolving really, nothing is fully settled. The second thing I then do is to give an example of this. When I say in action, the OceanCanada Partnership is an example of us coming together, academics and non-academics and different disciplines, to do something to study the ocean. And then I'll conclude with my new book, which is scheduled to be published this month, actually, the third or fourth week of this month. So it's giving you a sneak peek of what is in the book, and also it's also part of the interdisciplinary story I'm trying to give. So what is the starting point of this idea of interdisciplinary ocean and fisheries economics? The key starting point is that we, one of us practicing this, and there are a number, I could say, in fact, almost all of us on the panel you saw do a bit of this and some of this. So the starting point is that we acutely aware, we are aware of the environment-economic connection or nature-society connection, to make it broader than just economics, right? And this is what I call my favorite model, actually, and it's boiled down to its most basic form. If you open up this model, it's really complicated, and it encompasses all of us working to understand the relationship of people, between people and nature. And when you boil it down, there are just 2 things that people do when we go to the ocean or we go to nature more generally. What do? We take the good things, the stuff we need, the stuff we desire from the ocean into the economy, into our culture, social systems. We do the stuff we do with it. And at the end of the day, we produce waste as we do that. And where do the waste go? They go to the environment. They go to the ocean. Think of plastic pollution, marine plastic pollution, climate change, CO2. So we take all the good stuff from the ocean. From the ocean comes good stuff, and to the ocean goes the bad stuff. And we need interdisciplinarity to make sure that we don't overtake and we don't overpollute, and that is the concept. So that's one key element of interdisciplinary ocean and fisheries economics. Another thing is this kind of thinking involves working at the intersection of disciplines. So at UBC, we have the economists in their big building, they're doing economics and they're very disciplinary. They have their objectives very well set in their models. And then you have the rest of us scattered around the campus, whether it's in forestry or in the Faculty of Agriculture. And we are doing things like what I'm talking about, working at the intersections. And to do this, you have to embrace diversity in ideas, approaches, and perspective. You cannot, for example, say that all that matters is profit, and that's it, right? It doesn't work in an interdisciplinary setting. Somebody will tell you there are other things we care about. So you have to show genuine understanding for the approaches and methods of disciplines other than yours, right? You have to be open-minded, and you have to be aware that there are multiple ways of approaching a problem. I try to promote divergent thinking, because I think that is where the fun is. When somebody hits you with some idea that you've not thought about, your discipline it's not even aware of it, that is when the good learning happens. And all these are elements of interdisciplinary ocean economics as I see it. Another thing is that it's not just theoretical, right? It's applied policy relevant research. So you do the kind of work that people like Prince Charles or the UN or the US Congress would like to hear from you, because they see that there's value in what you're doing. It can help them achieve their goals. Hopefully they are really good goals, like the WTO trying to discipline, take away harmful subsidies that lead to overfishing. So that is another element of this idea of interdisciplinary ocean economics. To sum it up very quickly, this is this discipline is deeply interested in how economics, through integration with other disciplines, can be used to help ensure that coastal and ocean resources are sustainably used and conserved for the benefit of not just us, but also the future generations. So that is the thing. So you come in with your economic lens, open-minded, willing to integrate, learn from anthropologists, sociologists, biologists, philosophers, lawyers, in order to solve a really critical big problem for society. Now, OceanCanada Partnership is an example of this. We came together, a group of us applied for a partnership grant from SHERC, and we got it. It's 6 years, it's 2.5 million, and partners actually contributed the equivalent of that amount. And together we then set out to answer questions like, for example, how can Canada maintain healthy oceans and the well-being of coastal communities into the future? You want to do both, right? You want to make sure that what we take, the good stuff, really works for the community and the people, but in a way that does not jeopardize the future of those of the ocean, so it can continue to do that. Infinity fish idea is coming slowly here. And our aim is to understand the past. You got to know where you are coming from, where you are now, and then you look into the future and project the kind of scenarios you would like to see or not want to see, right? And that was how we structured this. So to be able to do this, we had three main components. We take stock, that is the past and now, and then we do scenario analysis. And the third component, which was really an important one, is how to share this knowledge with the larger population, with policymakers, with NGOs, with people, stakeholders, with First Nations, indigenous people. How do we get this knowledge so people who can use it to improve the ocean and ensure infinity fish actually get it? So this is just a quick show of the structure. We had working groups, we have national working groups, 3 of them. Then we have regional ones, because you got to understand what is happening in the Arctic, Atlantic, and Pacific, whilst you try to understand the overall picture, legal, policy-wise, data, integration-wise, and communication. So that's the national, regional. And then we have these cross-cutting things where you have to have governance, right? You have to have, because if people just did the right thing, we don't need governance, but we know that. I mean, we can do crazy stuff, some of us, and so you need that governance structure. The oceans are changing, climate change, and all other things. And access is important. Who gets the fish, right? So this is interdisciplinarity in action, and that's the basic structure of And one of the things I did, you know, some of us who started early, and I remember Ratana, for example, many years ago, we're discussing, if you are an interdisciplinary scholar, you finish a PhD, are you ever going to get a faculty position? Because the disciplines are so strong. And so what we did here was to say, right from day one, we prepare an OceanCanada CV, and we document all that we have done, you know? So we ended up with this amazing 56 pages of a record of all we have done, from core publications funded by the project directly and related publications where we collaborated with people, presentations all over the world, conferences, workshops. We made films and videos. This is the interdisciplinarity. We had a movie making professor on our team, right? Documenting how we do research and the outcome. Public forums, one of the best things we did. Just go out. Collaboration with Vancouver Aquarium. In the evening, we go into Vancouver. We organize a forum, a panel with the public and had discussions. And then, of course, all this led to lots of recognitions, and we trained a lot of highly qualified personnel, graduate students and early career scholars. Very, very nice. So this is just to show you a few pictures of us in action. So it was very collaborative, very intense. We put an idea and we shake it up and argue, lawyers and economists and natural scientists, anthropologists. It was quite inspiring to me, and I think to many of our team members. So that is that. One thing we did, I just wanted to show you a concrete product. One thing we did was before the election that got Stephen Harper out of the Prime Minister's residence, we came together, 19 of us. OceanCanada was actually just starting, and we came together, 19 of us, and wrote this policy paper and got it out. I outlined all the issues we saw with Canadian government policy and the ocean and people, and came out with recommendations. And this was so successful. We got interviews in the news. In fact, one of the interviews I gave to CBC was amazing. Within how many hours it was shared 8,000 times, and the reporter had to write me and tell me how we broke the record in some sense. And so we were out there, and that's part of being interdisciplinary. You just don't publish the papers in the journal and go to sleep. Get it out to the people, work with journalists and get the information out. So very proud of this work. And actually, when the Liberals won the election, we had 4 recommendations, and within a short time, 3 of them were implemented. It's not only because of this paper, many forces that led to that, but I think we kind of contributed to that in a way. The third part of my talk is, I hope I'm doing okay with time, is talking about infinity fish. And this is the new book. That's how it looks. That's the cover. And the idea of this book, I will quickly run through just to give you a little slice of it. It's going to come out soon, and as the cover, you see that infinity fish. And here again, I love this model a lot, and so I'm bringing it back here. If you really understand that interaction I'm talking about, then you have to do your taking of the good stuff, the resources we like, the services that the ocean gives us. We have to do that in ways that can continue through time. And we have to minimize our pollution. And if we are able to do that, then you can achieve infinity fish, because you can pass on an ocean which is healthy and good shape enough to the next generation, so that they too can have the option to do the same. And if we keep doing this, if each generation learns from the past and actually keeps, I cannot say they have to do that, is their option, but at least what I can do as the current generation is to give them the option to be able to do that. And hopefully if that is done, we will have what I call infinity fish. Keep passing it on, and we can get fish and all the other services from the ocean forever, right? That's the idea. Now, where did this idea come from? And this is just, you know, it's always good, because this didn't come from nowhere. The idea came from, it started from what I call the old continent, the mother of all continents. You know, this is Africa. In fact, Mandela used to say this quite often. He said, we're all Africans. Everybody on this coal is an African, because that was the beginning 5 million years ago, right? And people moved and waves, but we're all Africans. And the idea started there, actually, which is quite neat. I was invited to Namibia to give a talk on their National Fisheries Day. And they had 2 other African ministers of fisheries there. They had ministers of mining, because Namibia, if you know Namibia, there are two important resources there. Fish is one, about 10% of GDP, and diamond is another one. And they always, the 2 sectors always at each other's neck, because the diamond business, a lot of it happens offshore, right? So they are always, so I land there. And I didn't know there was a big political debate between the 2 sectors. But part of my talk when I landed, I just, for some reason, I say, you know, one of the things I want you to take away from my talk is that fish is more valuable than diamond. Because I know Namibia, right? I've been going there for years. So fish is more valuable than diamond. And the room was just blown away, because this is not the perception. The minister told me later, you know, when I go to cabinet, they keep saying, oh, you fish is this and diamond. And now you stand there and tell us why. And this was my explanation. I said, fish is renewable. If you manage it wisely, sustainably, it can give you benefit through time to infinity. And mathematically, anything that gives you net benefit, even if it is small, if you sum it over time, the benefit infinity is infinity. So infinity fish, right? On the other hand, diamond, popular parlance, they tell us diamond is forever. No, diamond is not. If you have a deposit of diamond and you take a ton of that, this year, that ton will not be there for you to take again. So diamond is actually not forever in that sense, you know. And then I go on to also say that the second point is that how many people in a room, like there are over 60 people listening here, how many of you have seen diamond ever in your life, really? Just a small fraction. How many of you work in diamond business in Namibia? A very small fraction. How many of you have eaten fish this weekend? Everybody will raise their hand, almost everybody. And so I tell them, diamond is very elitist. A few people grab the thing and run off with it. But coastal people in Namibia can just go get their fish and feed their family. This makes it more valuable than diamond. So that was my argument. This was the beginning of the idea of infinity fish, and I've just carried it along that way. Now, to the book. There are 17 chapters. In the introduction, some of the things I've said is this story is one of the first opening paragraphs in the introduction. There are 17 chapters, and they are the chapter 1 and the last chapter, which is an epilogue. And so the main chapters are the 15 in the middle, and they are broken into 1, 2, 3, 4 sections, broad sections. The first one is talking about valuation, how the way we do valuation is really narrow. We don't capture all the values. So 2 chapters trying to broaden the scope of what we value. And I'll give you an example of that. That's all that I can give in terms of deeper content of how we try to do that. The second section is talking about how we deal with time in our valuation of fishery benefits, natural resource benefit, of the environment for that matter. And this is where I introduced intergenerational discounting and things like discounting clocks, front loading of benefit, back loading of cost. So this, I think, is the heart of the book in terms of theory and applications. And then there are applications of this intergenerational discounting. One that will interest many here is an application to the collapse of Newfoundland cod stocks, right? And actually what we found is that the collapse is what economics will ask for. People will take their benefits as quickly as possible, convert them into capital or homes, whatever, as was actually made clear by Colin Clark in his 73 papers, right? So intergenerational discounting is one way to try to counter that tendency, and I apply them to a number of things. And then the third section is broader issues, because the whole idea of the book is that if we get values and valuation right, if we're able to capture what we truly value from our fisheries, not only in theory, but also in practice. That will set the tone and give us a platform to deal with all the other issues we are dealing with. It is illegal fishing, racing for the fish, governments giving your tax money to kill the fish, all those things. We will set the stage for taking good decisions and putting good policies, taking good actions to really ensure infinity fish through time. In the epilogue, I gave it a title, and the title is Knowing the Cost of Everything but the Value of Nothing. This is a play on Oscar Wilde's economists know the price of everything and the value of nothing. That is the thing here. Of course, economists know some value, some price, but the point is that our valuations are really, really not capturing most of the things. And this little book is a small effort in trying to fill that gap. So in chapter 2, I asked two simple questions. Is the economic theory of valuation adequate to ensure infinity fish, as I've just explained? And when you look at the literature, what the theory says that we should do comprehensive compilation of all the values that people care about into what is called a total economic value. So everything should count. Yeah, so that's the beginning. And what should be included in total economic value? Market and non-market values, not only market values. The price of fish doesn't tell you the whole thing. That's the idea of getting values straight and right. It should be direct use, the fish we eat, and also the indirect use, like carbon sequestration by some of the animals in the ocean. Option value, we just don't know what is really, all we know is the information we have now. In the future, what you call trash fish may actually be the valuable thing. And actually, we have seen that over time. Existence value, hey, the whales and the seals, they have the right to live too. You know, people say, oh, the whales are eating all our fish. Let's get rid of them so we get more salmon. Haha, really? So existence value should be taken into account and then passing on the value to future generations because value. So my reading of the theory is that it's broad enough, actually, if only we apply it well. And this is controversial. We can argue about that. But when I look at it broadly, it seems to be to cover quite a lot of ground. How about the practice? And this, I think this is where the biggest challenge we have in terms of values is, number one, there's difficulty in determining all the things people actually value, right? Who am I to know, right? And I can give you examples. There was a time I did a quick experiment on campus. I'm just walking, I see you, I say, hey, please, fish, do you care about fish? And most people say, oh, sure, I do. I say, why do you care about fish? And someone say, oh, yeah, I like eating fish. It's nutritious food. It's business. Our businesses depend on fishing, jobs. There was one person who blew my mind and said, oh, yeah, I care. And why? Because I love the smell of fish. Isn't that amazing, right? I love the smell of fish. What can I say, right? So you need to, and this is difficult. And even where we know all the elements, some things you just can't put a price on. And this is an argument I hear again and again. These things are just too valuable to measure, you know? So, and then there's uncertainty. We just don't know, right? And even on top of all this, we are now going into, people are talking about the post-truth world of ours, misinformation all over the place, social media, right? And untruths and people just telling you plain lies, right? I mean, you tell somebody this is a cup of tea and they tell you, no, it's a banana, especially the politicians. And then when you tell them to eat the cup, if they say it's a banana, they just move on. They won't even own up and tell the next lie. All this makes our life difficult, and that's that. And then finally, when the rubber hits the road, certain values are given more weight, and that is also something, and it's almost a human tendency that we need to push back. If you have to deal with current values versus future values, most people will put weight on current values, right? That's discounting. That's the second part of the book, right? So how do we deal with this? Because really, we should also take care of the future if we're going to achieve infinity fish. Private values versus societal values. That's another big challenge. Most people will just say, give me the money, me, right? And forget society, very harmful. Salmons for seals and salmon for people. This is a debate that I hear on and off. They're eating all our salmon, so let's just get rid of them. Let's give them condoms. I've heard somebody say that, right? And so, but hey, nature is nature. If you leave the salmons and the seals alone, they will find how to live together, right? And as part of the natural system. So that is, these are challenges to the practice. Now, Rubber Hits the Road shows up in the literature. That's the title of this slide. What I did here was simply to take the 9 top environmental and natural resource economic journals and check their publications over 10 years, and then do a simple search and say, how many of these papers mention any other value apart from market value, apart from the price, apart from the revenue people get? And even I was shocked about this. About 1% of all the papers in that 10-year period actually cared about anything else than just the market value. And this is where the big problem really is, right? So we need to improve this and change this. And to give you a little hope, it's not continuing to be that bad. I split the data into the first 5 years and the second 5 years, and that's what you see here. And clearly you see that there has been improvement in the later 5 years. And I think it's improving, but still far away from the kind of valuation we need in practice to ensure that we have infinity fish. Now, to be more comprehensive with the valuation, this is this is an example. I'm going a little bit deeper here as part of Chapter 17. This is a collaboration between First Nations Fisheries Council of Canada and our group here at UBC, the Fisheries Economic Research Unit. We've been working on this gently, slowly for a number of years now. The whole objective is to find ways to include the values that Indigenous Canadians really put on their fish and ecosystems that the market system doesn't really take into account. So and this is collaboration. We had workshops, we take our time, we listen to each other, and we came up with this very simple way of trying to capture larger values. Step 1 in the method is identify the different values and benefits derived from a fishery. So we did a pilot project here in a community in DC, and they identified 6 values: cultural values, environmental values, governance, social, health, very important, and then the market. Of course, we sell some fish, we catch and sell. So you see, they identify 6 values in there. The next stage in our method is simply to, and I think Ratana, you can relate to this with your dummy schedule. So we give them $100 each person as a budget, the amount they can spend, and we say, how much are you willing to spend on each of these values you identified? So they made their allocation, and that's the second step. Then in the third step, the points allocated or the dollars allocated to each identified value are then indexed to the price of the fish in order to drive relative measures. Yeah, and once you get the relative measures, you sum them up, and then you multiply by the price of fish in the market, and that will give you the total value as seen by this community. So got to do with community, and the method is such that each community can actually take it and go out and implement it. And when we did that for sockeye salmon and a community in BC, we found that fish that was sold for $3.75 per pound actually ended up with $35.63 per pound, almost 10%, precisely 9.5%. So this is a way we try to broaden the valuation of fish. A small example for you. Now, the second component of the book, which I won't go into, this is the slide I'm showing you here, is simply the effect of time, because really, infinity fish is about time. The use of environmental resources involves decision-making over time. How much oil or diamond should be extracted from the mine this year? How much next year? or should it be mined at all this year, right? These are questions that people in that sector, because it's not renewable. If you take a ton out, it's gone. So you got to decide how best to do it. Should salmon, or cod for that matter, on the east coast of Canada be fished intensively this year or not? So how much should we take today, tomorrow? That is all time-dependent, time-related decisions. So time is important, because the supply and demand curves of these things shift for various reasons, due to nature and also due to people. And that is the second, third sections of the book, and there you'll find the theory how we try to nail this. There's no time to go deeper into it. This is to give you a sneak peek, and I think we are almost there. For concluding remarks, getting values and valuation right is crucial to ensuring that infinity fish is not lost. We are losing infinity fish in many places. And getting our values, not just the price, price is right. No, value should be right if we are going to achieve this. This will set the tone for the policies we implement to guide our interactions with the ocean, with the fish, right, with nature. If your values are skewed, if all that you care about is the dollars you get in the market, or you just care about now and you don't care about tomorrow, then infinity fish is gone. And all this will help us take actions that reinforce positive feedback from people to the ocean and the ocean to people. One key example I like to give is subsidies. Subsidies is very hot now, because the WTO is trying to discipline that as we are talking. And subsidies is really something I spend a lot of time. Number one, even without your tax money going to fuel more fishing, it's already difficult to manage fisheries for all sorts of reasons. So if you give your tax money for fuel, for example, you are just fueling more overfishing. So there is the environmental effect, which means food security effect, and so on and so forth. Another thing which really gets me worked up is the inequity that subsidies actually introduce. Our estimates is about 80% of all the subsidies or more goes to large-scale industrial fishing boats, not the coastal community boats, not the indigenous fisheries, right? And this to me is terrible. I mean, we're using our tax money to aggravate inequality in so many dimensions. If you think of gender, for example, the work of Sarah Harper, one of my students, the large-scale, small-scale fisheries thing is the work of Anna Schobauer, and that was actually supported by the Too Big to Ignore partnership of Ratana and co. So the Sarah Harper actually looks at gender, women in fisheries, and what we see is that more women proportionately fish small-scale fishes than large-scale fishes. So if you give all your tax money to the large scale, you are actually aggravating inequality, gender inequality, and something which is already so much, right? I read a legal report, where they surveyed the world and see how many countries actually legally put men and women at par, legally. And I tell you, they found only 6 countries in the world. Think about that. This is legal, only 6. So if you bring in culture, religion, and all that, social, and then we use our tax money to aggravate this, I think that is simply crazy. And how about the youth? You don't start with the big boat, so youth are disadvantaged. So that is one of the reasons I am really pushing to provide the data and science to help us deal with this, rather than the current situation where many of our policies, that's the example I've given you here with subsidies. And I think I will stop here. I hope I haven't gone over my time too much, Madam Chair. Yeah, so over to you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rashid. That was a phenomenal journey and an excellent start to this presentation and larger webinar. So we're going to go now to Andres Cisneros Montemayor. Sorry, Andres, for his comments and reflections.
Thanks so much, Barb. Thanks so much, everyone, for this invitation. It was a really great talk. Rashid, it's the first time that I've seen the cover of the book. I'm really excited to see it in print. hint, hint, if you get any author copies, I can swing by UBC. So yeah, I mean, I was taking notes as I was going through this, and there was one thing that I wanted to start with, and I'm not sure if this was mentioned, but I'm Rashid's former student. I did my master's and PhD at UBC with him, and I think you really can't say enough how much Rashid is shaking up the field of fisheries economics. I mean, I would say, and this isn't just because you're here, Rashid, but he's really created a new school within the field of fisheries economics where, you know, before it was very much focused on, as he mentioned, market values, specifically fishing, fleet dynamics, maximizing revenue, these sorts of things. And what he was able to do through his work, and now through the work of all of the students around the world, is take those best methods and that best theory that was there in the economics field and really apply a completely new perspective to it. And so look at things like intergenerational discounting, like he hinted at. You know, why are we discounting the value of future generations? You know, there's no particular reason we need to do that. You know, the methods don't force you to do that at all. A lot of these global meta-analyses that have become a really huge driving factor in a lot of the global ocean policy that we do today. You know, a lot of that was Rashid who started this thinking in that global sense. And, you know, artisanal fishing and the benefits that has for local communities. He mentioned this case in Namibia, but he's done similar work all over the world and showing really how undervalued the contribution and the importance is of coastal and artisanal fisheries to different parts of the world. And so after saying that part, I mean, this second part of the interdisciplinarity that he's brought in, so not only shaking up the world of fisheries economics, but then even bringing it into this interdisciplinary collaboration system that he's created with OceanCanada, but with a lot of other networks that he's a part of that he didn't mention, is really cool because it shows an example of putting into practice interdisciplinarity as more than just a buzzword or a box that you're ticking as some sort of performative exercise. You know, really seeking out the input of scientists from different fields or local communities and different users, and inviting people to build the table, you know, and not just to invite them to sit at it the way we had done for many years in science and in policy. Finally, something what I want to highlight is that he mentioned a few times here, but Rashid is incredibly influential in the world of policy, and I think that's been a wonderful thing. It's really injected the science right into environmental policy all over the world and opened up a lot of avenues for doing so. And you know, I'm pretty early in my career, but I think as scientists, it's really quite easy to get a platform to speak if we're speaking to the consensus or what policy is already trying to do. And Rashid mentioned this paper that was led by Dr. Megan Bailey, who's on this call, I believe. But that's one example of Rashid being one of those people that are helping set an example that we don't just need to conform to what the consensus is and what our science and research is doing. We can actually push the envelope. And he always, as he says, you know, we keep pushing, we keep working, we keep piling on the information, the science, and the evidence until they can't ignore what you're saying. And so I think now, you know, we're at the point where we can actually push the policy to ways that are more aligned with sustainability and with equity, and really move the needle quite significantly that way. You know, and actually change the goals of policy through our science instead of only informing them, you know, if they ask for our opinion. You know, I think that's been something amazing that Rashid has been able to do. As any of you who know him, or even if you just saw him on this one webinar, that energy and that drive to keep doing our best work, despite any of the challenges that happen, is, I think, one of the great motivations and the great examples that we can all take. You know, so if we marry that perspective, that energy with this really, really high level scientific method that he brings, it's something that we can all use in all our fields, in all our research that we do. I'll stop there. I don't want to take time away from the discussion, but thank you very much for letting me sit on this panel.
Thanks, Andres. We're going to go to Ratana Tunpagni now, but just before she speaks, just a reminder that we're going to be moving shortly to the Q&A, and I don't think there are any questions yet in the Q&A, so I'm looking forward to hearing from the wider audience.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Barb. So it's a great opportunity, of course, to be able to have this conversation. And I have known Rashid for many years, and it's been really great to work with him. So it's wonderful to see again, the recap almost of the career. So so well done, Rashid. And since Andres already talked about the interdisciplinarity aspect of Rashid's work, and also these kind of policy implication, I will focus on the infinity fish, because I was really intrigued by that. We all want to, we are into, right? We like to have good title whenever we talk or write a book or paper and stuff. So I was very curious to know what this is all about. And of course, as you alluded to, Rashid, it happens to be something that I have been working on, which is about value. And it's been really, something that I struggle with. I'll start from what you were saying about how the title came to be, right? You're saying that fish is, you were presenting to the group in Namibia and make this statement to them, right? That fish is more valuable than diamond. And in some ways, right? You figured it out. You got them to eventually accept it, that of course that is true. But in reality, a lot of us actually would go the opposite always, right? We value for something we don't have. And whatever we have, we take it for granted. So, you talked about total economic valuation, which is a very basic theory that we all have to use. But then we have behavioral economics that actually really becoming something that we really have to look more into, of course, with, our professors basically looking into this, and then, Nobel Prize winners and everything. So you kind of wonder, right, what we need to do in order to align whatever people believe to be their value and the value system with their action and behavior. Because for some reason or another, we seem to not be able to get that straight. And I think what you're trying to do with your book in terms of getting people to understand value and valuation is really putting a lot of that, unpacking some of that complexity that we struggle with in thinking about how best to make decisions, how make, allocations and etc. Right? So we all need to appreciate this tension that we're going through. And you use the word, how do you weight this value? And first, do we really know what values are? We can agree that not everything is countable, not everything should be monetized. At the end, we all do that. We all try, every sector is arguing for more for their own sector simply because we have more value. And whatever they can argue, whatever they can put, especially when you think about the way we make decisions about the oceans these days, blue economy, blue growth, it's all about the GDP. It's all about these other easier to count and easier to argue than these other types of values that you mentioned, but very difficult to argue. So not everybody can take on that job the way you do. To be able to say to Prince Charles or the minister in the room and saying that, you know what, you are missing something, right? That is very important. So I don't know whether we could have some discussion about that. Because I mean, we work with small scale fisheries. We see how it's being done. We realize the marginalization. We know that we need to change. But for some reasons or another, we don't seem to be able to articulate either not well enough or not as convincing enough to make that change that we need to see. And I really get to the point, when I talk about small scale fisheries and people would ask, are you suggesting that we should maybe get rid of large-scale fisheries. And I'm sort of like, we can try that for a bit and see how it goes, right? And that might change things up. But to me, when you started to speak to equity, we talk about justice, we talk about gender parity, and etc. There are many things that need to be fixed, and there's not going to be an easy step towards that. But I think we can learn a lot from the way you communicate, the way you can really get the ears and eyes of those people who are making policy. So to me, it's about engaging with influencers, right? How to influence the influencers. And I think we can learn a lot from what you have done. So thank you and congratulations on this wonderful infinity fish. And I would like to add, it's too bad that the cover is already made, because infinity fish would only be meaningful and valuable if there's people in it.
Rashid, the floor is yours for a few minutes. We have about 10 minutes for this discussion, and then we'll go to open Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much for your interventions. And I don't know what to say, but Andres, I mean, you're doing interdisciplinary ocean and fisheries economics, right? I mean, this is what you do. You focus a lot on equity, which is fantastic, right? For example, and so your comments are, yeah, they just make me feel a bit, yeah. So, and then Ratana, great comments, and your point about behavioral economics and how to move the needle, right? Because, okay, we expose all this, we talk about this, but when the rubber hits the road, this is what we end up doing. How do we move that? I think it's a big challenge, and good minds are already thinking about that, right? That's where behavioral economics comes in. You have the experimental economists, and you have all these nudging theory people, so psychology and economics is working a bit more together. We have colleagues on campus now who do this. So that is a big area. We need to do more on that. I agree with you. Then your point about the blue economy being mainly about more. One comment I say is, the blue economy idea is not, there are different views of it, right? I mean, and in fact, the Pacific Island states are one bloc that have really pushed that. And they are actually thinking in the way we are talking here is how do we are ocean states, and how do we make them work for the people rather than people just grabbing and running away from it. So there's the equity angle, the sustainability angle, and then you have the real business people, and they're behaving as if we are discovering the ocean today. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of riches, let's go for it. Deep sea mining and all those things, and that is the type which really aggravates the problems we have now, and we need to deal with that. So those are very, these are the two things I noted, and you guys said a lot of stuff that I just have to share up, not to add to that, because it's already heavy stuff. Thank you so much. And yeah.
And Barb, I'm not sure if we have a chance to, I was also thinking is not that I struggle with a lot of the things that you're saying, right? I mean, even though I'm trained as an economist, obviously my background, I care very deeply about issues. And I understand that a lot of these things are politics or the things that are behind marginalization that are just enormous. And I think the way that I sometimes try to remember is that we're not alone as scientists in these things, and I have my part to play, and we can do all we can. But what I try to do is really reach out to people that are doing these sorts of things. And that can be activists or scientists from different disciplines, or politicians sometimes if they're interested. I find community activists tend to be by far the most effective and fun to work with. But yeah, I mean, I think I see a lot of students in here and stuff, and I say don't get discouraged. We can't solve everything from science alone, but fortunately we don't have to. And there are a lot of people out there, and I've seen a huge change just in my own short career and people's just interest and engagement in changing these things, so I think we need to reach out to those people and for help and stuff, at least to help us keep sane and keep working.
Yeah, keep pushing.
So
Yeah.
that is so true. And in fact, that kind of fresh energy, right, that you're bringing to the discourse, and also to really, this is what future generations are about, right, Rashid? I mean, you've done your bit, and now pass it over. Andres take over, and then start falling. So you kind of need, I mean, I've definitely, the reason why we're still doing this is because we also believe that we can still make some a difference somewhere. But I guess it is important to do what Rashid is doing, which is to do really reach out, right? That kind of outreach to different people who need to get the message. And I think it's so important that we have to keep that positivity around what we do. I mean, we're not going to be, we might need to change tactics as we go, but it's important to continue to do it. But I wanted to maybe go to that word about inaction, right? Because I've seen people. I mean, I know you like to be in action. We all are about that. Yes, but there's a little bit of there's a fine line, right, between saying stepping beyond that role that scientists should play, or being seen as advocating for a certain cause, and maintain that scientific integrity. So maybe Rashid, you can sort of give us a little bit of how do you maintain that? So that your voice remain that authoritative voice, and kind of like I said, scientific integrity, as opposed to being seen as you just being.
Yeah, excellent question, because it's something we all struggle with, right? I mean, how far can you go? Daniel Pauly has a nice saying about that. He says you should lean on the wall of advocacy, but never go through it, right? So that is his own thing. But actually, the way I do it is, I really try. Whatever I say to the press, I have some backing for it, So when I say X, this type of subsidies is harmful, there are papers backing me. I don't go out. And I think as scientists, that is really important, because, hey, why should somebody listen to me and not the other person, right? It's because it's based on evidence, it's based on data. I will cite my colleagues and say, so that is what guides me, really. And once I'm doing that, I don't care what other people think, right? Because people will say what they say. And there's this beautiful, Carl Waters, our senior colleague, great in excellent ways, but there was a time he was just raging against those of us who talk to the press, and he says, you shouldn't be advocates, you should, and that kind of thing. And you talk to the newspaper and it's not happy. So Callum Roberts is very active, on marine protected areas. So he actually wrote a commentary about that. And the title of his commentary is Advocating Against Advocacy, So here we have the big scientists saying, oh, you shouldn't advocate for anything. But by saying that, he's actually advocating for something, right? So advocating against advocacy, I kind of love that title. So just base it on your science and what the evidence you have. And I think you'll be okay. You'll be okay. Yeah.
So I'm going to step in because we actually have some questions.
Yeah,
6 at least so far. So the first question, Rashid, is from Bob Rangeley. He says, great talk, Rashid. Can you speak about how climate change affects how you approach economic valuation, and possibly how it will exacerbate the inequalities you spoke of? Thanks, Bob. And it's a big question.
It's a big question. And actually, I have 2 chapters in the book on climate change. So I think chapter 15 and 16. And what I say is climate change is a big threat to achieving infinity fish. And that's one of the titles. And the other one is roughly like ensuring or avoiding overfishing is also climate action. So those are the 2 themes I had in there, and chapters. And so climate change is a huge challenge in so many ways. First, to the ecosystem, to the fish themselves, right? So temperatures, the science has shown temperatures are rising. Fish are trying to survive like everybody, right? Like the Haitians refugees we saw recently, right? Living things don't just sit down and die. You don't see fire and just sit down. We all do our best to keep alive. So the fish are moving as if they can with the cold water, and they're moving towards the poles. And those that cannot move fast perish, right? So there is that ecological thing. And the social aspect of this is that most of this movement is from countries in the tropics because the waters are already warm. So they get hit by this temperature increase in the sea surface temperature. And so the fish are moving away from where we need food, if you're thinking globally, not just only Canadian, to places, to Iceland. Iceland, they don't need more food as far as I can tell, right? So you have the social component here, the ethical component. These countries actually pump very little CO2 per capita compared to Canadians, Icelandics and Norwegians. So it's just crazy when you think of climate change. It's going to make our life difficult, and it threatens our ability to ensure infinity fish, which means we've got to work hard to mitigate it and also do our best to avoid aggravating the consequences by putting in place policies that harm the system, that harm people and harm nature, and then make things really, really bad. Yeah, climate change is big.
Okay, thank you. Question number 2 is from Ajith Raj. How can we bring in an extended understanding of valuation to make marine spatial planning, the marine spatial planning process more inclusive?
More inclusive, yeah, that's a good one. Again, I think it's one of the chapters. What we did is, what was in the chapter is to look at the economics and the ecology. And this is one of those quick, and people who know me know I don't like very complicated models. I like them simple, to tell you something. So this is teamwork with William Chan, right? He was doing a lot of vulnerability analysis based on biology. So, and they focus a lot on the life history of the species, which can then boil down to what? The growth rate of the fish. You know, the intrinsic growth rate is one big factor, right? And then here I am, I'm talking about discounting and economics, how they also drive. So the two of us came together, brought these ideas together, and did a spatial analysis trying to show very simply where economics and ecology can live together reasonably well, and where they have to be apart, you know. So by bringing this country, so we'll take an area and we'll look at the countries fishing there. We'll look at their discount rate as an indicator of how they want to take fish or not. And then we look at the intrinsic growth rate of the species in there. Now you bring them together. So if you have a low growing species with low intrinsic rate, and you have countries that have high discount rate, man, this is danger. The two can work. And so that means this is an area we really have to work hard to manage. Community has to come together. You have to collaborate seriously. But there are places where the fish is like, there's one fish in East Africa called Kapenta. Kapenta is some small fish like that. It's unbelievable how productive this is. They take 90% each year and the thing just comes back, right? So if you have fish like that and you have a reasonable discount rate, actually economics and nature can work together. So there's a chapter in the book that does this. And so first you bring the values, and you have to find out from the people and engage inclusively to determine, especially the discount rate. It's like valuation. And then once you get that, you identify areas that management cannot mess around with. Economics will just run over the nature. And so you got to work hard to take care of it. Yeah.
And I guess that's where your marine spatial or marine protected areas would go.
Exactly. Yes.
So
where you spend your DFO budget, right? You know, you don't go use it where there's no danger. You got to be. So there's that element also. Yeah. Thanks.
So the third question is from Cornelia Noun.
Mm.
Hi, Rashid.
Yeah.
Thanks for a wonderful talk. How to strike the balance between influencing the so-called decision makers at the top and strengthening the capabilities of, for example, artisanal fishers and indigenous people to actually sit at the table or even change the table.
Yeah, Cornelia, thank you. And thanks for making it to the talk. It's amazing. Yeah, we haven't met for some time, you know, COVID, right? Yeah. So good question. So how do you balance these two? They need to be balanced, right? You can't concentrate on only the influencers. And actually, if you do that, you are likely to lose even the influencers because a lot of them care. I mean, they have their following. They have to listen to some extent, at least, to their constituency. So you need to be able to work on both ends because they can reinforce each other. And if you leave out the grassroots, you are really leaving out the force, a big force that can compel the influencers to influence in a reasonable way, right? So you need to be able to do both. And how do you do that? In terms of our work, one of the things, that's why we talk to the media, for example. You get staff out in the media, you do videos, you talk to communities. There was a time I was in South Africa just to meet, I don't know, Ratana, were you there? Muniba was there. We had a meeting with local fishermen in Cape Town. And I think there was an NGO that helped to put them together. And then they got the minister and the finance minister, Trevor Manuel, was then he just finished his term with Mandela as Mandela's first finance minister. He was at the meeting. So and the whole idea is to get information to fishers so they can push their leaders. I remember them telling me, "Oh, Rashid, why should we care about the high seas? It's so far away. We have nothing to do with it." And I tried my best. I showed them the species they catch, that the people catch in the high seas, those interactions. I tell you, they got so happy about this, they just whisked me away after. They didn't allow me to eat the lunch, the general lunch in the thing. They took me to the coast, got me some fresh fish, and we had a nice lunch. So you have to do both, and that will help reinforce and push things forward.
Okay, the next question is from Miguel Angel Cisneros Mata. Great talk and ideas, Rashid. I was thinking that the difficulty of conveying the real value of fish and nature deals not only with convincing decision and policymakers, but also with many fishers themselves. In the same community, there will be a diversity of thinking. In my experience, fishers value fish differently. That can be a barrier to infinity fishes. Do you have any ideas on this? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. That's Cisneros, right? Another Cisneros, huh? Yeah, thank you for joining. And there is really, I was going to say no relations, but there is. I think that's Andres' dad, you know, who is a very serious senior scientist. I think he rose to the highest position in fisheries research in Mexico. Yeah. So thank you for making time to join. And your question is really, really a good one, because this is part of our problem. Values to you is different than values to another person. And that's why we keep fighting, right? I mean, so you have to find a way. I think the way to do it is to find ways to strengthen the communities that don't just talk for themselves, but themselves and also the sustainability and equity. And we just try to reinforce them with information. Actually, that was what happened in that room in Namibia, because after my talk, the fisheries sector just came for me. They really came, literally took me to a room. They collected my presentation and they were so happy. And the diamond people, if they had the chance, they will just knock me off, right? And so that talk kind of strengthened a group that is struggling, that the society doesn't appreciate their value. So you need to do that. But yeah, this is why it's so tough. Somebody came to me and said, when I talk about intergenerational discounting, this was in China, he came and said, you know, Rashid, all you say makes sense to me, but I don't. Why should I care about the future generations? I don't care about them. And he turns and says, the generations before me, what did they do for me? So I just look at it and say, you know, if you don't care about the future generation, I don't know what to do with you, right? What can I do with you? So there is that. argument all the time, and that's why we need to get our work out to support those that, from all we know, are working for sustainability, equity, food security for all, actually.
Okay, and another question from Ajit Raj. How do we use behavioral, economic, and nudge-based approaches or a human capability-based approach to build sustainable governance in place?
Big question. Big question. And maybe Ratana, you can, I know you've thought a lot about behavioral economics, right? Your professor was one of the leading ones, still, I think, one of the early ones. So maybe you want to chip in here, will you?
A good one. It's a big one indeed. I'm not sure if I could really answer it properly, but I think if we wanted to think about different models of governance, it would accommodate some of these, other approaches that we need to see. And I think what we do, for instance, in interactive governance, is to encourage people to think more about the underlying, kind of meta level governance. So it is really about principles, it's about values, it's about the images, but she talks a lot about that as well. So I think we need, going back to the interdisciplinary aspect of our work, I think we should bring in all those different approaches to help us in improving governance for fisheries and ocean sustainability. And of course, again, better understanding of why people do what they do in terms of underlying values, what informs their decisions, and what people are capable of, and what they can draw from in terms of inherent qualities, and also what are the capacity that needs to be built. I think all of that are part of what we can do better when it comes to sustainable governance.
Wonderful, yeah. That's great. If I may quickly add to what Ratana has said, what I also find is that good examples help a lot, good examples. So in terms of marine protected areas, we know communities, I think in Spain, where one community gets on MPA and in a very short time, they see real improvement in their catches and so on. And then the next community say, we want that, right? So the more we can do, that's behavioral in a sense. You just get a good example and that can help change behavior and move people, right? So quick addition.
Okay, the next question is from Ian Stewart. The focus on time you're championing here, does your book engage with the circular economy field? More applied to production than harvesting sectors, but work in that area tries to think about human processes on natural timescales that are long-term, i.e. infinite. Yeah.
So the discounting idea is actually struggling with that. The fact that businesses, what do? It's quarterly, they report profit. And if they make high profit today, doesn't mean they are going to be happy, actually. I had a friend who was in a company, they made about 40% profit one quarter. And we were talking and he told me, I said, oh gosh, you guys must be very happy. He said, but Rashid, is actually the opposite. Everybody is sad. He said, why? He said, because next quarter we have to beat 40%. And everybody knows that's a big challenge, right? So there is that time dimension. And that's what the intergenerational thinking is trying to do. And I think the idea of circular economy is not been developed in the book and needs to be developed more. But the idea that we have to minimize the pollution that we pump into the ocean, I think is touching on that. It could be developed further because that's the whole idea. So to be able to make sure that we don't, for example, leave fishing gear, plastic in the ocean, then you need to think about your circular economy. How can you capture these things and take them back in, right? Plastic, the same thing. So that's the way I see the book touches a bit on that, but not fully developed. Yeah. Andres, have you done work on circular economy? You want to add something here?
More related to blue economy. So Ratana was saying there's all these different understandings of blue economy. And certainly one of them is this growth, kind of GDP growth angle. Sort of this oceans as a new frontier, which, as you mentioned, always makes me laugh, right? As if nobody was out there already.
Yeah.
but within this thinking, there's a lot of circular economy arguments. Right now, they're more tech-related fields, like the question kind of hinted at. So a lot of it is, the circular economy around, water desalination plants or, ocean renewable energies. A little bit less so on the harvesting, which ironically, as you were mentioning, Rashid, with this balancing with the diamonds and the fish, like renewable resources should in theory be some of the easiest ones to do sustainably. But yeah, I don't think it's really, I agree with Ratana that as much as the circular economy thinking is very prevalent in academics, I think, again, when the rubber hits the road, a lot of countries are still not really thinking about it as something realistic. Like they're still very much fixated on the kind of status quo GDP thing, which is something that I'm hoping we can change.
Great.
Sorry, too many different things going on here. The next question is from Juliano Palacios. Hi, Rashid.
Hey.
I'm curious of your thoughts and the rest of the panel as well on how to balance the ever-growing demands of academia as early career researchers with policy-related actions that are not always acknowledged in academia. Is this a job for us early career researchers or for more accomplished, I want to put that in quotation marks, scientists?
Yeah, wonderful question. Yeah, it's good that you pose the question to the whole panel. And we have a range of us. Andres, you're assistant professor, and I know, right? And you have 2 little kids, and you're out there, you got to publish. And so maybe, Andres, how are you handling this? And then Ratana, we all can chip in a bit because big question.
It's tough. Hi, Juliano. Well, I mean, I think that if I'm understanding the question, it's more to kind of balance the pressure to publish, do presentations, teach, committees, with also people's expectations that you're engaging more in policy, right, at the same time. I honestly think, and I completely agree with you, these things aren't acknowledged in academia, and academics who study academics, this is more than proven, right? And I think the change needs to be in universities. In university hiring plans, I think what's happened over the years is that there's more and more expectation for early career researchers to be engaging in the community, engaging in policy, but there's not a subsequent reduction of expectations on other things. So it's just assumed that you're going to find the time somewhere. And as Rashid mentioned also, I mean, this is, my wife works, we have to balance a lot of things. I'm lucky that we're able to do so, but a lot of families and disproportionately women are affected by this pressure of having to balance family life as well as all the academic concerns. And so I think there's actually a question towards the end about the values fluctuating from generation to generation, right? The next generation is focusing more on non-monetary things, which I'll let you answer in due course, Rashid. But I think that relates to this because I've seen a gradual change, even in academia, as we move away from the old model of, frankly speaking, mostly older, mostly global north gentlemen in academics who had no concept of this balancing act. And we're getting into much more of a place where people are coming from different backgrounds, juggling family lives. Most households, at least that I know of, we have 2 working parents for the most part. And so I see that changing gradually, sort of as our society changes. I've seen a bit of a change in academia where now there's more of a recognition of the incredible difficulty that this brings. And I'm hoping that that'll eventually lead to more of an institutionalized change in how we value and I guess rate, if that's the appropriate word, sort of academic production in the sense that you're asking, Juliano, right? So like when it comes down to hiring committees and tenure, I guess, committees, we're not there yet, but I would hope that eventually these changes in society will become institutionalized.
Yeah. Very good. Ratana, do you want to? I have 2 quick points to make, but you could answer.
I'll add something quickly, and I think it's really, I mean, we need to appreciate that demand and tension and etc. But I think it's not a bad time for to be in academic today with what's going on. Exactly what we've seen. We see more interdisciplinary research. We see people are putting more values to engagement research and other other way of contributing to the knowledge, right? And but I think to do it to be able to handle or balance it well, I think it's about what Rashid and Andres, you're part of that too. It is building the network of people that you're working with, right? So this is not working in isolation. Basically, we need to have that network of colleagues and people working with us. So a lot of people like Rashid and I, we don't need to have another paper, but we would support publications, right, of early career scientists. And I think that kind of supporting network is something that is already, is there, but if we really learn how to build that and strengthen that network as we work to make it really work for everyone, then I think that's a way to overcome this challenge.
It's wonderful. Very quickly, these are all great, and I just wanted to add, yeah, things are changing. Things are changing. I mean, I can't count how many meetings I've gone to with faculty at UBC where the question is, how do we actually broaden what we look at in terms of promotion and all other things. So there is progress there. Now, the other point I'm going to make is about how to maybe soften the load on junior members. The thing is to I think try to adapt the concept of saving 2 birds with 1 stone, Usually we say killing 2 birds with 1 stone, save 2 birds with 1 stone. What do I mean by that? If you integrate your research with your community work, your communication work, your teaching, then you are actually literally using 1 stone to kind of do all this. So that is the concept, because tie your research really to your community work. Then it's not something new. You are just translating or taking this to places where normally academic papers don't go. So I think that's one way you can actually integrate them. And remember the concept of you don't only publish, you republish, right? You publish for a journal, you publish for a newspaper, op-ed, you publish for a community piece. I was in India and this was amazing. We were talking subsidies and local community newspaper people. And India, they're very creative. So you see a lady with an assistant and they are a media house, they are a media house, right? So they came into the meeting and they were so eager. They interview you and then they take the news straight to their communities. They write in the news. It's amazing, right? But it's the same work, the same published work being translated. Save many birds with 1 stone.
Soon you'll have a flock.
Yeah. You have a flock, yeah.
Okay, so I see 2 more questions. There's also at least 1 in the chat, but we'll see how far we get. So the next question is from Cornelia again. It says, can you think of dialogue fora where the different perceptions and values can meet and compare notes in respectful ways? And can we set up more of these as a practical way to make perceptions and values evolve? If we don't want to manage by disaster, more dialogue looks like it might be promising.
Absolutely, yeah. Cornelia, you're right on. And I have one example very early when I came to the Fishery Center. We used this a package called, I think, logic framework, So and then we brought the different fishery sectors together at the then Fishery Center in the huts, the beautiful huts, right? We brought them. We have recreational fishers, we have indigenous people, commercial, all the sectors. We brought them and use that model. You start building it together as a community. So this is the fish we all are targeting. what do you want? So this person will say what they want. We feed that into the model, we run it, and we see the outcome. I tell you, one after we went through this process, a number of one comment that came out is, I remember this vividly. The recreational fisher turned into the commercial. My God, I didn't know that we're so close in our goals for the fishery. You know, that kind of thing, just by going through the process. They all want something, they think in isolation. But when they came together, actually, we quite close. And therefore, that dialogue through a framework helped us to bring them closer and hopefully reduce the fighting and lead to better policies that helps them all. So Cornelia, right on, we need more of those, actually.
And from Chelsea O'Driscoll, do you believe that values fluctuate from generation to generation? Do you see the next generation focusing on more non-monetary values as we work through this pandemic and as we deal with climate change and sustainability for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, values change. That's why when I talk about infinity fish, I say we give them the option, because really values change, right? Think of all of us, my God. 50 years ago, what is the value? 100 years ago, my God. I mean, what will Rashid be doing, you know, if you go back 200, 300, picking cotton? So values really change, and that is important. And this is where knowledge and information and all that we are doing is important, because knowledge, values are not formed in a vacuum, right? The information you get and so on. Think of the vaccines, right? And the misinformation, what it has done to people. You know? Even when they are sick in the hospital, they say, we won't take it, right? So yes, values change. And the way we get our information, how good it is, how we share it, can help us lead to values that are really more sustainable and more just, which is the main goal.
Okay, so we're running low on time. I think this has just been wonderful. Ratana or Andres, is there anything you want to add, or do you have closing thoughts, Rashid?
Yeah, let's go. You have the floor, Andres. I think the last point I made is fine for me. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you guys for the invitation. It's a really great discussion. I wish you had more time. Yeah, keep up the work. It was really, really great to see so many people in the audience and such a mix, right, of people that are incredibly established and early career researchers, right, and students and stuff. So I think that's right on. That's what we have to do. Thank you.
Yeah. We're good,
Ratana?
right?
Yeah, and I just say quickly that I think it's been wonderful. So thanks, Rashid, and congrats on the book. We look forward to reading it.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. It's been a joy, and we keep sharing and learning and moving the world forward. The one thing I could say is the acknowledgement in the dedication to the book is a funny one. I made my son to read it, and he was a bit easy in the beginning, but then he came around to. So I said something like this: this book is dedicated to all the Black, brown, and white people, women and men, youth and adults who are working day and night to make our world a more just and sustainable place. And that is all of you on this panel, okay? Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you all. It's a great launch to the new speaker series, People in the Ocean. And we'll look forward to, I hope, seeing all of our participants and more of their wonderful questions at the next event, which will be in November. And it will be a presentation by Ben Belton, and the focus will be aquaculture and food security. So we look forward to the next step. And thank you so much. So very, very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Take care. Talk to you all. Yeah. Bye.